Hi, I'm Marcus Coward, and this is Wake Up New Bedford, and I'm here with Jill Ferreira. Jill, thanks for coming.
Thank you so much for having me, Marcus.
I know you had to travel a little bit of a way, so I really appreciate it.
I'm happy to be here. New Bedford's my home, so yeah.
Yeah, you're definitely no stranger to New Bedford, but for those who don't know you, let's start with, and then we can work backwards, but what kind of work are you in right now?
Yeah, that's great. I'm right now working with Land Trust. It's a Pecasset Land Trust, Pecasset Pokanoket Land Trust, PPLT, based in Southeast Mass and Rhode Island as well. Yeah, on Pecasset land, and it's been a journey to get here. So I recently was working with a farm called Global Village. I still am, but PPLT was our fiscal sponsor, and then we merged with them. And so my line of work has been, I've worked since I was 15 years old in kitchens, all kinds of jobs, and I think the theme has been often communication and food. And just personally, I love cooking with people and sharing the joy of food. And I think from composting, grocery stores, kitchens, now I'm kind of specializing in the human piece of farming and agriculture, and it feels like a really full circle time where I can apply a lot of these skills that I had no idea I was going to synthesize at some point, you know. But I'm really grateful to be here. I just started full-time with the Land Trust at the start of this year, so I have a lot to learn, but it's coming together really well.
Sure. And so we've talked about how even though you lived in Freetown, right? That's where your family home is, that you went to school in New Bedford. And so, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so remind me, what were the schools that you went to? Like maybe starting elementary school, go to high school.
Yeah, I actually went to, my family is a Catholic. I don't currently really practice or identify as Catholic, but it was a Catholic upbringing from kindergarten all the way through graduating high school. I went to, it was called St. Mary's, and I think now it's called All Saints, right near Tarkland Hill and Voc-Tech, right in that neighborhood, the North End. And then I went to Bishop Stang High School. Both my parents actually went there, and we moved to Freetown when I was 10 years old. So because my grandmother lived in New Bedford, she lived right next to St. Mary's, and so we lived there and spent a lot of time at my grandmother's house.
Now, looking back, would you say that you were able to learn a lot of things while going through that Catholic education, or in hindsight, would you have preferred to go to like different schools, different public schools?
Yeah, I think I would love to. I know so many people that went to New Bedford High, and I've heard so many of personal stories, and I would love to know the experience of public versus private education, the food system there, like their dining services. Now that's such an interest to me, having worked in dining services and knowing like the story behind food there, but also just cultural. Catholic is a very particular mission of values and religious practices, and looking back, I have my criticisms of kind of gender stuff and cultural things there, and I am grateful for my family, the Ferreiras. We are a generous, loving group of people, but we also are constantly late, and we're constantly chaotic. And so going through a really kind of tight-knit administrative practices at St. Mary's and at Bishop Stang, I was always in detention. I was always in trouble. So for just uniform being out of place, we were late every day, every day. I've been in detention for hundreds of hours, probably.
Wow. Okay.
So I did okay. Like I was able to A's, B's, C's. I was never really
Sure.
into school, but
Sure.
I'm grateful. They worked so hard. My dad he ran the bingo for years at both schools to get a discount so that we could,
Okay.
because private you got to pay. And back then it probably wasn't as pricey as it is now.
Yeah.
I don't know the cost now, what it
Sure.
is to go to these schools, but my chosen family and my people are very diverse and a lot of immigrant families and experiences. So I think public school, there's a lot I probably would have identified well, like, you know,
Sure.
in that setting, and I would have
Sure.
appreciated that experience. Yeah.
And so when you're in school, did you have an idea of what you wanted to be when you grew up?
Yeah, I had no idea.
Okay.
I remember, like, as a kid, I would say fantastical things, like I want to be a mermaid, or I want to be.
Don't we all, Jill? Don't we all?
Don't we all? Something kind of like, it felt like such a faraway thing. Like, what do you want to be? I don't know. So I've always been really motivated by my interpersonal relationships. I feel like I've learned so much through friendships, and I'm motivated by. I often will throw myself under the bus, but if it's for my friend, I will move the mountain.
Sure.
For, you know, so I've led that life, and a lot of my friendships I've kind of just tagged along. I'm like, you want to go cross country, help me move? Yeah, let's do it, you know, and then and stuff like that. I feel like I've just been motivated by intuition and by love of community and friendships. So, and that's what I think. I appreciate the question now because that you just asked, because what I said earlier in the intro, I've always had to work as well. So it's always been, how do I make money for myself, provide for myself, and do something that's tolerable and that I'm capable of doing. And it's led in such a variety of different themes and areas of work that now I'm like, oh, this is all relevant now.
Sure.
Or yeah, so.
And so you didn't know what your path was going to be, but you do bring up food. And so was that an early passion for you, or did you kind of develop the love for food a little bit later on, or was that always there?
Yeah, I think my mom growing up at a time when, TV dinners was a thing, you know, her, the lure of, you know, convenience and food and packaged, and you get to, you know, pop it in the microwave. You know, the advertising really worked on America during that time. My grandmother and her, and I think she grew up in a time where Twinkies and like all these really chemical-laden foods were just such a big thing, that her kind of pendulum swing of her upbringing was health and incorporating more vegetables. So I think her generational switch was to try to get more towards healthy eating. And that was something she really instilled in my sister and I growing up, and trying to cook as much as possible. And my grandmother brought a lot of traditional, she had a lot of traditional recipes that I was around my grandmother a lot, so I got to see her. So those are some influences growing up.
Sure.
In food, you know.
And so after high school, did you move on to college?
Yeah, I had no idea. I'm like, I don't know what I want to do.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's worth it to go to college. I applied to Bridgewater because it was close to my family, and I didn't get in. And then I went to Bristol Community College. My mom was like, why don't you just take some courses there? And
Sure.
and I fell in love with BCC. I met some incredible faculty there. I felt empowered as a learner there. For the first time, I joined this honors program, and it was really interesting stuff. And then I had friends that had gone to UMass Boston in the meantime, and so I would visit them, and I eventually transferred to UMass Boston and kind of fell in love with the social sciences, psychology and anthropology. And I think it started meeting people. You know, those are both BCC and UMass are very working class institutions. They,
Sure.
You know, you're going to school with people who are parents coming back for a second degree, immigrants, people have lived in the neighborhood for generations. It's really, I love that part.
Sure.
You're learning so much. It's not as much in a bubble. People are working. People are doing all kinds of things, and I met a lot of people. A dear friend, Ryoko, I met at Bristol Community College in a course called Remembering the Holocaust. It was a really heavy, Holocaust literature course, and we became friends. She's from Okinawa, Japan, and we just stuck it out, and we stayed friends for a long time. And she ended up living with me in Boston after I had transferred. She was going to Holyoke, Mount Holyoke College in Western Mass, and we cooked together all the time. She had a job as a ghostwriter for the Japanese embassy, and we lived together for a while during her internship, and we would cook every night. And she would kind of show me some traditional cooking that she had done, or that her ways of cooking, and that was the first time I think that I realized how amazing it is. Your work, if you work with what you have, if you have 5 ingredients and you have some ideas and I have some ideas, it can be an amazing creative project.
Sure.
And you're incorporating tradition, nuance, on the fly. You could do so much. So
sure.
Yeah.
And then so you're studying psychology, sociology, you said, anthropology, and so when you chose to study those, was it mostly out of personal interest, or did you see yourself now finding a lane for yourself career-wise?
It was personal interest.
Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate that question too, because there's a lot. There's a lot that can be done in those fields. I think I had. Back to just my statement about really great faculty at BCC, I had people that I developed interpersonal relationships with, professors. One person was a mentor, and she would sign PhD after my name on my papers, and it was like,
wow.
I didn't even see myself that way before, but she really helped me gain a confidence and an awareness that I have something to offer to the field or the profession. I remember thinking wow, it'd be really cool to be a therapist and work with people. It's a messed up world. People are struggling. I like talking with people. Maybe that could be something. But then I think it transitioned to an interest in culture and how beautifully profound and hideous the human nature can be.
Sure.
and all its diversity. In cultures, you see humans adorning ourselves. We're dying. We're being born. We are getting to coupling, or we're getting in all of its different facets. We're kind of doing a lot of the same things. And so the mind within the culture and within the society in my perspective, it can't really be separated. You have to understand someone that might be considered crazy in a society that's doing horrendous things. What does that actually mean, and how do we break that down? And so that's where my fusion of those things has evolved.
Sure. And so you've been working since 15, you said. What was, and how old were you for the first job that you really connected with? Because my first job was being a dishwasher, so
Sure.
I can't say I really connected with that.
Right,
for sure. So it might not be your first job, or maybe it was. But that you really connected with.
Was it in New Bedford?
It was. Yeah, it was at Riccardi's restaurant.
Oh, really?
Yeah, for
Okay.
sure. It wasn't terrible, but
sure, but
maybe not my ideal job, but yeah.
Yeah.
Just what it is.
Definitely. Bishop Stang is right near Kumon. Kumon. It's a tutoring center.
Sure.
I think math and English for. I actually think it's a Japanese company, but they're all over. I've seen them throughout the U.S. and Canada. But I enjoyed working with young people and just tutoring after school. And actually, at 16, I started what ended up being a good 4 years of working for a pizza shop with a Greek family. And learning, I got to learn a lot about Greek culture and food and language just through Maria in Freetown. Everybody's Pizza, if you all know.
If you don't get hip, okay, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we got our seafood from Kyler's, and the seafood was such a hit, but it was a greasy job. But there was something satisfying about just working with a family-owned business, and there's a piece of food and culture there that now I can kind of look back and maybe analyze that. But at the time, it was like, how can I save up to get a car? How can I save up to do this, or have empowerment?
So, were you always a very curious and analytical person when it comes to human nature and sociology, really? Or did that kind of develop as you grew? Or was it always there?
Yeah, I think it's always been there.
Really?
There's not too much that surprises me about human nature, and I think I've just, understanding people is an endless fascination of mine. So I think there's some, I don't know where that comes from, but I think far back I've always, had that.
And so, at this point, I'm really excited. I mean, we probably have about 10 minutes left, but so much of what you do sure involves humanity and human nature, involves food, but also the environment, And so, in any way, would you describe yourself or relate to the term environmentalist?
Yeah, thank you. I've never thought of that really, but I would say for sure. In the realm of environmentalism, I think definitely as a younger person, looking at political development and political identity and awareness, as a kid, when there was ever, we're going to chop down this section for a gas station, or we're going to build this Walmart in this forest, that evoked a deep feeling in me, like that does not sound good. And I think, writing letters to whoever, I think there was going to be like a Walmart center built and towards the Assonet part of Freetown. I remember writing letters. I cannot remember to what, maybe the city or something, but just rigorously, this can't happen. And over time, I think, working in more agricultural now, understanding more the scale of mass farming and what that does to the soil and what that does. I mean, absolutely. I'm with environmental stuff. I'm also I think it's important to be aware of greenwashing and being aware of what that does. People trying to push political agendas and using environmental, a facade of environmental care. Meanwhile, they're doing something that's extremely destructive to the environment, or looking at the root of things. If we're going to promote electric cars, what is at the cost of that? Is it children mining in horrific conditions for these mineral whatever the materials are needed for that, if it's great here, but over in another country, there's tens of thousands of people, living in such conditions. That's not any environment that I want to support. So looking holistically, what does it mean? Yeah.
And so learning more about the environment, is that something you did on your own time? Is that something you learned in school, or is that something you learned through your jobs?
Yeah, I think, experience. I all through school I worked a lot, and I appreciate my education, and I think I've learned the most through my jobs. Just witnessing and being around, understanding different things, working in a kitchen and seeing how much food is going to waste. Is that going to a landfill?
Oh my goodness, don't get me started. Yeah. It's crazy how much we waste here in America. Like it is, yeah.
Absolutely.
But keep going, sorry.
Yeah, thank you.
You triggered me. So much food waste, it's ridiculous, yeah.
Yeah, and what do you feel when you see that? It feels horrible, right? It feels...
unnecessary, but still planned, like why, this is like almost intentional, like some food saving methods that employees or people want to do is like illegal. It's like, no, don't save the food, It's like, okay. But yeah, okay, so continue. So you
Yeah,
did
yeah.
learn a lot about the environment through your jobs, you're saying?
Yeah, I think, you know, especially food jobs, seeing a lot of food waste, you know, seeing like, oh, we recycle, and seeing even practices of people, you know, throwing recycling, you know, there's the implementation and the infrastructure, and then there's the culture of people. If we're not training people on the job to say, this is the bin that this goes in, that this type of trash goes in, this is the type of compost goes in this bin. If we don't have, I'm not advocating for like policing people and like, you know, reprimanding people, but to foster a culture where we don't have to think about it. We know that this type of waste goes here, and then it goes to a farm to go in the soil. I think having more awareness of these kinds of things would be ideal. But yeah, I've seen all kinds of stuff, dumping out all kinds of, you know, grease or chemicals. You know, the person didn't pick it up this time. We'll just dump it in the backyard, you know, of the establishment. And it's like, what is it? What's in that grease or a chemical going right into someone's backyard, maybe? Or pest management, chemicals for pest management. I know that's a huge thing, but now I'm seeing in the agricultural world, organic pest management can actually be incredibly clever and effective. There's so many ways to mitigate, especially in urban farming, rats, cockroaches, that it requires no harmful chemicals at all. And so that's a huge thing too. You know, chemicals leach into food, into soil. Yeah.
And so there's so much to talk about, especially with farming, soil health. Okay, so we have a few minutes left, and so we'll leave a lot of that for the second part, about the nitty-gritty with the environment, some of your other jobs. But if you can spend a couple minutes talking about, going back to what you just said about fostering a culture, okay? There was someone, this is years ago, but a close friend of mine who, I hate littering. That's one of my pet peeves, okay? And so he just like dropped like a water bottle outside. We were in a parking lot in Buttonwood, okay? And I had to go outside and pick it up. And I'm like, please don't do that, especially around me. And he said, well, why does it matter? I mean, what's one water bottle gonna do? It's not like already, like environmental danger's already happening. What's this one water bottle gonna do? You know, it's like, isn't it already too late? What would you say to that person, or to someone with that mentality? Like, what is recycling gonna do? You know, what will my contribution do? What would you tell to that person?
Wow. Oh, I feel for you in that situation too.
Oh yeah.
I think that when we want to see change, we have to start with our internal selves. And I cannot remember where I heard this phrase, but I live by this. What I do to myself, I do to others. What I do to others, I do to myself. And I think that there's something really powerful there. If I throw something on the ground and I don't care, that's saying something about me. I am of, and I hear this in a lot of indigenous cultures, many diverse indigenous cultures, you know, we are the land.
Yes.
We are of the land.
Yes.
The land is me, us. I am the land. So if I do that, if I throw trash on the ground, what does that say about how I see myself? You know, there's a connection there. And yes, we're deep in it. There's no doubt. And I think the act of doing something is an act of resisting what is already deeply in place. If I choose, that's not going to make a huge difference, you know, throwing that water bottle in the trash versus the ground. We don't really even have too much faith that that's going to get recycled anyway. We know the recycling industry, whatever. Yeah. And that's what we have right now. If we're going to make the case like, whatever, then why don't we make the case that we can change the whole recycling industry, or you know, how can we actually make steps towards bigger changes that are going to make bigger effects. in trash, in the waste management world. There's a lot of stuff we can do, but I think individually we have to start within ourselves.
Yeah. And not just giving up so easily.
Yeah.
Like you said, we're deep in it, okay, but it's not too late. And some people are just like, all right, we're screwed, you know. That it is. So many people have given up and they do think it's too late.
Yeah.
And it's like, if you're ready to give up hope for the planet, again, what do you think about yourself? You know, like in your daily battles, when you think something's too overwhelming, do you just give up? Or do you succumb to the stress? Or no, do you fight and try and find some hope, try and find a way that we can win? And I think that if we did internalize that the land is us, that this is our planet, our home, and had a little bit more pride in that, then we would find a solution. We would find a way, instead of just saying, it's too big of a problem, let's let someone else deal with it, or the next generation deal with it.
Oh, that's a classic one.
Yeah, it's not going to be my problem. You know?
Yeah.
But what about your kids? Do you not care about your grandkids?
Yeah,
You know.
I really appreciate that, Marcus. I really agree. Yeah, that's a really good synthesizing of making that connection.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's so much work to be done, and yeah, I try not to overthink it too. You know, what feels good? Does it feel good to throw trash on the ground next to the little bluebirds?
Or do you not even think about it?
Do we not even think about it? Am I so absorbed in so many other things that each action is just autopilot? You know, that doesn't feel good either.
And so, something that we brought up before when we first talked was being present. And that is just so important in daily life, so that you're not just doing things that could be harmful, but you're not even thinking about it, you know?
Yeah.
And so having that environmental awareness, but also having that internal awareness to be present and to know that every action you have has a reaction and it has a result and matters and a consequence.
Yeah.
It could really change your whole perspective on yourself and how you view the world. And so that really wraps up part one. And so I know we've only talked about so much, and so we have so much to talk about in part two. I'm really excited for it. And so thank you everyone for watching. This has been Jill Ferreira, who does so much, okay? And we're gonna talk more about that in part two. So thanks for watching, and catch us in part two when we continue this conversation. Peace.
I'm running,